I think in the 80s, we must stop anthropologists coming into the country. Secondly, we have our own academics, we have our own Papua New Guineans who now can become anthropologists themselves.
My personal opinion is that anthropological studies in the past has been part and parcel of the colonial forces.
Yeah, sometimes they tell us, you go to the library and you look at this book and you read this, and sometimes we ask the lecturers, can we do it from our own background knowledge? And they say, oh no, you have to read the books in the library. And that's why we get very upset. Oh, why should I read a book that is written by somebody from outside, when I can tell it from my own knowledge, my own society?
Traditionally, anthropologists studied non-Western societies in the colonized parts of the globe, where people could not speak English nor read the books written about them. But recently, the people who were the subjects of these studies and their children have begun to step out of the books and speak for themselves. Nova visited 4 communities in Papua New Guinea to find out what the people themselves had to say, to learn about anthropology from their point of view. Altogether in this country, there are about 3 million people who speak 750 different languages. The country gained independence in 1975, ending nearly a century of colonial rule by the Germans, the British, and the Australians. Located to the north of Australia and just south of the equator, half of the main island belongs to Indonesia and half to Papua New Guinea. There are also 3 other large islands and hundreds of smaller ones. Anthropology, like other social sciences, is the study of people. What makes it unique is that field workers actually live with the people in order to record their experiences in their own environments. The first places Nova visited were the villages of Pere and Bunai on Manus Island, about 400 miles from the mainland of Papua New Guinea. It was here that Margaret Mead wrote 2 of her most famous books, Growing Up in New Guinea and New Lives for Old. Dr. Mead, who died in 1978, was one of the most famous anthropologists of all times. Recently, however, her study of another South Pacific island, Samoa, was denounced by one of her peers, anthropologist Derek Freeman. In Papua New Guinea, criticisms are also emerging about her work, not from anthropologists, but from people who grew up in the villages she described, like Naharuni, a member of Papua New Guinea's parliament.
First of all, I didn't know what anthropology is, because when she came to the village, no one knew anything about anthropology. So until years later, when I was at university studying, and that's where for the first time, we read about Growing Up in New Guinea, the books that she's written after she has spent the time in Pere. And after reading all of that, then I look back to the time when she spent at Pere and Bunai, and some of the things that she wrote in the book, I could understand why they were either half-truth or unrealistic.
Margaret Mead first visited Manus in 1928, when she and the field of anthropology itself were young. She returned 5 times, her last visit being in 1975. Her books made the people of Pere and Bunai known throughout the world. She always stayed in Pere village, a village of fishermen, which she brought alive for the public in her book, Growing Up in New Guinea. Here are some of the descriptions and footage that she and her colleagues filmed on one of their visits. To the Manus native, the world is a great platter curving upwards on all sides. From this flat lagoon village where the pile houses stand like long-legged birds, placid and unstirred by the changing tides. It's a world whose currency is shells and dog's teeth, which makes its investments in marriages instead of corporations, and conducts its overseas trade in outrigger canoes. This is Pere village today. It's still a fishing village, but there have been many changes. Financial transactions now take place with paper money. overseas travel is more likely to occur in an airplane than on an outrigger canoe. Children go to towns and cities in other parts of Papua New Guinea to study and work, but they send money to their relatives and they return often to their home. The villagers' livelihood still comes from fishing, and different clans are still defined by the kinds of fish they catch. They are often called the Manus people, which means the people who live off the sea. The Manus own very little land. They are almost entirely dependent on fishing, and they trade with other people on the island who are gardeners and hunters. There is now a dirt road called the Highway, which connects this area with the capital of the province, the town of Lorengau. Francis Tanau is from Pere village. He lives in Lorengau, where he is the Speaker of the Provincial Assembly. He remembers Margaret Mead from his childhood, although he didn't really understand why she was there.
My father told me that she is studying something about anthropology, but I can't tell you about that one because I'm also don't know what she is studying about. So you just wait. When you grown up bigger, to be a man, you will study some of the things about what Margaret Mead did in our village.
Mead's older friends, who could not read, were never really sure what an anthropologist was, but they remember her with great fondness as a part of their lives. Nialawan Pondrakin translates for us.
Time Dr. Mead came to Perry, Old Perry, the people, the women and men, some of them were young, and they didn't know what purpose she came for, what she was supposed to do as an anthropologist. However, when they go fishing or when they go to Bitsego, she went with them. When a woman or man or anybody in the village is sick, she goes there and helps them with medicine.
John Killipack, J.K. as Margaret Mead called him, became her confidant and her closest friend. He visited her in the United States, and he has always had a great confidence in the importance of her work at a time of change.
Writing book, now you can only molg the patient, but the patient you can lose. You know, can stop. Now, Margaret Mead, emi writing story, now all the patient, you belong period as soul. You know, long all the place. Long period as soul.
When an anthropologist is intimately involved with the life of a village.
Margaret Mead made a film about Perry, which all were able to see and judge for themselves. We brought the film and a generator to Perry so that people would have a chance to see it again and tell us what they thought. They were, they said, very pleased with the film, but they also had objections.
September 20th, 1967. To a Manus father and a Lucian mother, a baby was being born.
Stop! I'm just stop me stopping because long. This la Mary me like Karim Piginini. Emi also me ikut bla. Look good long I long people man people Mary. Na only like Piginini man Mary in no good bla long only can look it. So me one plus something is have a stable long blessed side yet.
I just want to make a general comment, not on a specific part of the film, but just a general comment. And it relates to, I think, for future filming, the people, or actually the leaders, should be consulted on what you wish to film, because there are some things that are against our customary practices, and I think we should be consulted prior to filming.
It is, after all, their lives that are being documented. Margaret Mead realized that. In her last book concerning Manus Island, called Letters from the Field, she wrote, "Only during World War II did we begin to learn that anyone, anywhere in the world might be listening. And from that time on, the anthropologist had to assume a new responsibility to write about every people in the world in ways that they and their descendants would find bearable and intelligible." However, it is in this very book that she made a series of remarks which some found insulting. They concern people from Pere's neighboring village, Bunai. Nahuruni is from that village.
She claimed that those of us from the inland of Manus are the most unintelligent people, usually unattractive, and we don't think abstract about things, whereas the Manus people, the saltwater people, are very technical-minded. They're more or less more intelligent than the inland people.
Before independence, a group of inland people moved to the coastal village of Bunai as part of a nationalist movement to unite the different groups who lived on Manus, so as to be better able to challenge the Australian colonialists. This was the first time that the inland people, who are gardeners and hunters, and the saltwater people, who are fishermen, decided to live together in one village. Mead had written about the movement and about the village of Bunai with great interest. However, she also made the statements which the inland people found so insulting. What many of them think is that she simply didn't learn enough about them to understand them. As she had mainly lived with the saltwater people of Pere village, she was more used to their ways. Seliao Yowat lives in Bunai. He went to school and he decided to return to live in the village, and he has read Margaret Mead's comments.
Kastan embi kisim kastan blang titan tason na tok titan ikat sabe nan nali inokat sabe tason long tes pula time wave long kastan blang titan nan nali titan inar blak kastan blang oliet na nali inar blak usia inar blak kastan blang oliet tason long luk long wave long kastan long nali imo fitru antaptru long titan.
This may seem like a very small matter, a smattering of insults about very few people. But it's all the outside world know of them, and it's sealed in time.
The unfortunate thing about documentation is that it becomes a permanent record, and we held against it. Sometimes I'm offended. I'm visiting some foreign countries, and someone will give to me, pick up a quotation from one of Margaret Mead, and because I'm from Manus, I'm supposed to be saying, yes, that's true, or that's the way we're still living there today.
Naharuni comes to Bunai when she can to visit her family.
Oh, every time when I'm just tired of the red race of town, just come off and keep away from telephones and people pestering you. Just come and relax, go to swim and stay with the relatives. It's almost ready now.
Naha's getting together with some of her aunts. She asks them what they think about Margaret Mead's books. They remember when Margaret Mead visited the village, and they heard about the books she wrote. They think her books have a lot to do with the biases between the two villages. Naha translates.
We have our own biases, prejudice against the saltwater people, and that's what obviously Margaret Mead wrote what the Pere people told her. And they said, well, probably if she had come and stayed with us, we would have told her what we believed of the Pere people, and she may have written a totally, completely different book altogether in our way, how it would have written it in our favor, how we were intelligent, we make big gardens, we hunt lots of pigs, trees, and it would have presented Pere as a very landless people, drifters, lazy, they can't make gardens, and they live entirely off the land people because all they had was fish, and they exchanged the fish for the kind of products, garden products that we have.
Margaret Mead is certainly not the only anthropologist to see things through the eyes of her selected informants. It's a very human problem all anthropologists face in an academic discipline which claims a certain objectivity. However, it's not the only problem faced by anthropologists and their subjects. Now that the children of these villages have learned to read English, they've been able to read what Margaret Mead wrote. At a council meeting in Bunai, people told us something of what they thought about being in her books.
Well, time ibin kamblong Pere na Bunai, ibin writing mombla book. Bis time ibin studied long Mosby, all this la book belong and ibin come out long all get a library. Nam la bin rusim some la bin kamlo University of Papua New Guinea. Now all this labuk all some mangi belum lawe all no been hamas through long this labuk way involving all the manus been stabbed inside with plant something way false even based as all pere. And mom la something way wrong long this labuk longen. Na narla something wrong longen. Even salim all this labuk any more hamas money. He give him hamas lo pere na bunai.
Something way ko ino long nothing. Na mikisim when something true long tumbuna inside long bless when kind true story. Only picking me go out. Na long time like ko come long you, na rabla country like sim long you, and this like sa come up in money. Now na suppose you like sim when something picture or camera now all the same too. Now you must start thinking long villages.
The annoying thing is it was until later that most of us learned about the book she's written and learned to believe that it was us who gave her that fame and it was our way of life, the way she lived with us and studied us, that gave her that fame throughout the world.
It so happened that the West had the technology. The West had the written documents or writing. So they went out to study the so-called primitive cultures and to write about them. So in a way, it has not brought about a human understanding, but it has made one human being or groups of human beings subject of study by another. So that process has dehumanized rather than humanized relationships.
I think the time, anthropologists were looking at Papua New Guinea societies. They were doing comparative work. They were comparing them with their own societies, Western societies. So they kind of put them in an evolutionary scale and thought that we were still developing, so we were at the bottom of the ladder.
Anthropology was born during an era of colonialism and suffered from the prejudices of that time. Anthropology today is coming of age. A new generation of students would like to see changes in the way the world is viewed. Nova went to a small village called Uyaku on the northern shore of Papua New Guinea's main island to meet a young anthropologist and find out how he and the people he is studying are feeling about the experience. John Barker is a graduate student from the University of British Columbia. He has been here a year and a half and is well aware of the kinds of issues that have been raised by the subjects of previous studies.
During the 60s, a number of fairly young anthropologists became aware and concerned of the connection between anthropology and colonialism and multinational corporations and other forms of modernization. And a great debate started between a more conservative, old-style anthropology and the young ones coming up, saying that anthropologists should be now involved and actually taking action to help people or to fight some of these things that weren't so good. I think my experience was probably typical of other anthropologists my age who were sort of born and bred on that stuff. And we've tried to incorporate it into the kind of work we do. And I think it's changed the shape of both anthropological research and anthropological writing.
The name, or the first one here, what would be the name of this first ship?
It's a new age for the people of Uyaku, too. Children here now go to a school, which is part of the national education system. They study English, world history, and math.
Rectangle. Rectangle. Is it correct?
Yes.
Raymond, would you come up and then pick up?
In the past, the children would have spent most of their time learning from the parents how to build canoes, how to make gardens, and how to hunt in the jungle. And from their grandparents, they would have learned the history and folk tales of their people.
Yes.
Now it is John Barker, who is one of the most avid students of these tales. He listens to one of the oldest women in the village tell a popular tale.
Ikakat. Ibotare gorobu bung. Kahne kai. Gegegemba ku gegegen kide ke iba bog. Ikaka. Pimba babe bung. Kahne gebe yo kanga buntora fito. Timosate. Kaka te kusina tiyejo. Bimba baka iruru. Gorobuka jejo. Ibotare tiyejo. Jejo. Menegerise. Ito yan si vera. Luka. Tato tana ne tau meta. Gorobuka ware to wasiso. To na karatoso. Mimba baka ka gore menang kangere da. Ai ka gore ne menang kangam. Gorobuka ka kore ne so. Karatoso me dava sema wagushimati. Niukwe. Luka. Avankuna. Tarangwaka. Tiroshi kamasiso. Arukanga tona kukushimi karaton. Tarawushima. Ibe ishonshibe. Oriko kanjoroko. Thank you.
So they made a new canoe, corded things to the canoe, and then both of them sailed out. Both of them started pedaling.
What was the word for paddling? How did she say that? Dikakasi. So she repeated that several times. So they paddling.
Yeah.
Okay.
The folk tale that John has just recorded and is now getting some help translating is part of a larger project, which is to take down the clan histories of this village. It's a project which has the support of the villagers, who are afraid of losing some of their history. Now that the children go to school, the parents spend less time with them, and they don't learn as much about their own past. The recording of these unwritten clan histories has also created one of John's major problems. We're used to having one version of history, but here there are 12 different clans, each with its own history.
Taking down the clan histories has not always been easy. You go to one group and they'll tell you one story, and you go to another group and they tell you another story. And according to the morality of the place, the ethics of the place, each clan is only supposed to tell its own story. Their story belongs to them. They have certain customs and ornaments and so on that belong only to them. They're not supposed to talk about any other group. But the fact of the matter is that they almost can't help talking about other groups because they all migrated into the area together. So as I've taken down the histories, I've continually tripped up against contradictions and holes in the information and so on. And I found that I've had to ask people questions about, not so much about other clans' histories, but when another clan says something about their clan, then I pass on the question to them. And in some occasions, people have gotten quite upset to find out that there's not full agreement in the village. In the village situation, there's never just one truth. That's a myth that's been partly taught by anthropologists and it's in the popular press, and so it's part of a popular belief.
The village council is where important matters are discussed and decided. The people of Uyaku held a council meeting while we were there so that we could hear their opinions about having an anthropologist and a film crew in their village. The taking down of the clan histories has been a focus for examining both John and themselves.
Neni aruruanen kasanganan ka John Bakari buka terere neni iteri tirarau kunenga. Neni aruruanen ka sa tau banka neni ka Yesi Santaipa. Neni ka takokoas. Ei koti gugubanang wano ai turai tinan taipa pana. Ena wano nato fo wano agugu. Lokawana.
Ninga nan tai pa ninga nan tai pa pe nang tauri ka nan tai pa pe nang wano ai turai tinan taipa pana. Ena wano nato fo wano agugu. Lokawana. Ninga nan tai pa pe ninga ninga tauri ka nan tai pa pe nang wano ai turai tinan taipa pana. Ena wano nato fo wano agugu. Lokawana. Ninga nan tai pa pe ninga ninga tauri ka nan tai pa pe nang wano ai turai tinan taipa pana. Ena wano nato fo wano agugu. Lokawana. Ninga nan tai pa pe ninga ninga tauri ka nan tai pa pe nang wano ai turai tinan taipa pana. Ena wano nato fo wano agugu. Lokawana. Ninga nan tai pa pe ninga ninga tauri ka nan tai pa pe nang wano ai turai tinan taipa pana. Ena wano nato fo wano agugu. Lokawana. Ninga nan tai pa pe ninga ninga tauri ka nan tai pa pe nang wano ai turai tinan taipa pana. Ena wano nato fo wano agugu. Lokawana. Ninga nan tai pa pe ninga ninga tauri ka nan tai pa pe nang wano ai turai tinan taipa pana. Ena wano nato fo wano agugu. Lokawana. Ninga nan tai pa pe ninga ninga tauri ka nan tai pa pe nang apung misa baka ka ikakajab.
O apung abaini John baka kame awenji kita kinananin. Nana apung totorga kinkinde o nana mat kinkinde dari gumema. O kanya ngari kinkinde gumema tarawro nen kinkinde. Ko tugur tai pa peninna. Baka kaya ka arimara ka sekanen ka sekayam wa karimara. Nya tahu bang. Waka awenji kita kanin ama munen koti tauri vesinasi o koti sari nen abana man tai pa penen nai karimara sekanen kayam beiba.
Apun John Buro na neno tahu bang. Wano apun kanini wati beben tirara neno tahu bang. Atai ka awasutine nang John Buro na neng ikayan si beben neng airo raveresing ira ito ait kamara ukwanani. O wana apun kanini wati beben nentong ay pangairo raveresing ira ito ken karuwaw neng eisen tikiti ti beibiana. Nenang marawana. Nenang marawana.
Nana boragita petitomina library oni nang ero camera tamatari film ero titomina tikikitana. O apun ye yab sapini. Eko makas nana timomon nangka. O timomonka. Apun pe John Baka nang kayang sbiba tibenyera o kari toya buari kayang ke perepe o wana pun film tamataring ero nang tingana tuan te tauk penanga apun pe ayari tere ka awa tau kira mara tau bang o development o apun nina moni yeta esentia simpe ibasi ate tau kira mara tau bang inana civilization ni nam na makasaw ye ya bika apunga te fo saka makasaw timomong nen nan ninso nen nakasenka aipa o amumung nen na ton timomong nan ninso akanen nan amumung ninso nga akutate o aipa nen.
If he studies a life here and he gets all the things written down in the book and he puts it up in the book, I know some of the young men who would come up later on in the years, who would go to high schools, universities, colleges, would read the books about it. But the people, all the people in the village, would gain nothing out of it.
It's a fair criticism of anthropology to say that they take things away and they take information away and make a career out of it and they don't give anything back. It was more fair in the past when they actually did send nothing back. But it's still true. It's an uneven relationship. I think for most of us coming here, the money that we come on is not our own. It's a university grant or a government grant. But all the same, in village terms, it's an awful lot of money. We're awfully rich by village standards. And that's something that comes between us. I'm not sure how it's going to be overcome. I suppose the most important thing is to get much more national work being done by local people, by people trained at the university and so on.
People in Uyaku do appreciate two things that John has done since his arrival: the writing down of the clan histories and the establishment of a library which has more than 450 books. The clan histories will be photocopied and placed in the library. But it's very difficult to be both anthropologist and friend, to use people as subjects and hope to be trusted by them as people. In the past, before people here understood what anthropology was about, such questions did not arise. Now they color all their relationships with the anthropologist. John originally came to Uyaku with his wife, Anne, but she had to return to Canada to do her own work. Since then, John's been perhaps a bit more lonely, aware of his place between two worlds. At the end of the day, we found him listening to some Canadian folk music on his tape machine and preparing supper for some of his newfound Uyaku friends.
I think we started feeling at home. It would be almost, for me, it was probably almost a year before I really felt comfortable and had enough friends to feel that I could feel comfortable. Language is a problem and a real barrier. The work is a problem and a real barrier because you're studying the people, and so it's hard to establish intimate relations, always knowing that whatever they tell you, might be going into the notebook, and having to decide there's just some things that are just too personal. You don't want to put in.
It's taken time, but John has made some real friends. Most evenings are spent with some of them, not working, just settling in.
You say grace. Amen.
Nanny. Caught any pigs lately?
Yes.
When did you go out?
Not me, but somebody caught it today, but unfortunately, and the other side. Parents.
Oh, yeah.
John has begun to feel at home. He's begun to speak the language well and to understand more about the perspective of the people of Uyaku. But it's taken a year and a half, and he's here for only a few more months. Most anthropologists spend no more than 2 or 3 years with the people about whom they write. However, near the town of Mount Hagen, in the highlands of Papua New Guinea, lives an anthropologist who has stayed on for 20 years. This is a far cry from the ivory towers of British academe. Yet for Cambridge graduate Andrew Strathern, it's become home. Director of the Institute of Papua New Guinea Studies in Port Moresby, he spends much of his time here, in the mountains, with the Kwelka people whom he met 20 years ago. And especially with Onka, a prominent and respected leader who has had a great influence on him.
This is Onka, who is a leader of the Kaolga people, with whom I've lived for a number of years during the time that I've worked in Mount Hagen. He is an outstanding leader, and over the years he's become like a father to me as the field worker in the area. I came with my wife Marilyn at the time. We both came up as graduate students. We'd never traveled further than Europe, and so we came here to Mbuk. And we found a lot of people waiting there, all of whom greeted us with interest, but didn't say very much. After a while they melted away, and through this crowd there emerged Onka, who took me over to his ceremonial ground, which is just beyond here, sat down with his little son, Namba, and immediately started to tell me something about the traditional religion of the place, ghosts, ancestors, and things of that kind, to which I listened with obvious interest, with what few words of Pidgin English I understood at the time. And so, in a sense, from very early on, Onka had made a claim and shown his interest in the type of thing that we might want to do. But this was all quite spontaneous on his part. It wasn't until much later that I learned that most of the people, when we first came, thought that we weren't human at all. Not human, but some kind of spirit beings. And Onka was the only one who was brave enough to take the risk of approaching this sort of spirit.
Andrew and Onka, and some of Onka's family and friends, gathered together at the site of their first meeting and reminisced about those days when they weren't at all sure what Andrew really was. Rumbakal, married to Onka, remembers very clearly.
Hey, we're going to Tibu, we're going to Tining down of Gandana, and the name of Caddy one day. Uncle knows better than Nak and Dagan Regan, and Nimti William. Tendement Pepper and Rumanico. Pepper and Rumani. He's the one of Rose working to we're going to Ningan with the Mary Mocky and the getting it. Bungo get him newly covered diamond in the cave under Bagan Gaga. Young man can mock anything.
Yeah, minting a canon magnet and bagab and a cannon, but we can make a kuntet mock to the manner on Rogan again with a Iwan pawakro pompia mor penteke rumbokanan pegan pelebule yandom beating. Kain belling anything kanan toten snake.
Yeah. Wa yo go bagong le bining odninde ga bagong le. Moge bining odninde ya bange wa. Buku moga bang ajan do ganjang maju go paraban nang buron mai yo ya bang ogale bimbing no tele yo ogale bimbing no tele yo ya bang.
Each fieldwork experience is very personal, and what you do with it afterwards in your life, I think, is fairly personal. At the end of more than a year's stay, we were due to leave, and we had kept some sort of long trousers and skirts and things in a particular bag, and so we started putting them on inside the house. We were presented with some pork, which we ate, and we changed into these different sorts of clothes, and as we were doing so, I heard Onka saying outside of the house, "Oh, what they're doing in there is they're changing back into white people, because they're going back to the place of the white men, and they were only here with us as black people for a certain period of time. Now they're changing back into white people and they're going to go." I heard this, and the thought of it went with me when we did go back.
2 years later, Andrew returned to stay.
And each time you make a decision, you don't think it's necessarily irrevocable, but then the pattern tends to emerge over a period of years. I think there's a reason why the pattern did emerge and a reason why it should emerge, and that is that all the things that people said towards the time when we were first going to go was, what was the point of your coming here and joining our kinship groups if, after all, you were just going to leave us and go back to your own place? You're playing some sort of game, aren't you? It's not real. So if you take your subject seriously, if anthropology is supposed to be a serious subject, you must also take seriously remarks of this kind. You can't separate off your life in that way and say it's justified because I'm an academic and of course I have to take these results back to my own country and I have to teach university undergraduates because that's the name of the business. Of course it is the name of the business and one is supposed to do that, but the other side is not just a game. It is the reality that you've come to find, and unless you can acknowledge that and accommodate yourself to it, then in a sense it was only a game that you were playing, and therefore anthropology as a whole becomes only a game that you're playing and not something serious.
Yeah. Andrew has written many books and articles about these years. Finally, Onka wrote his own book.
Inte ungefär morgonen till varandra jag brukar det.
Åren det mycket men nu.
Jag bodde. Ja. Boken med mig till ja när kommer det wardrobe det match. Vad tampa. Wardrobe det mail mo kan kona pa andra kan andra binena. Mail på det på på kunde med på på na ugle lopet. Vad tampa kunde med på na ugle lopet. Vad tampa eli korangkal på det på lopet. Macam nang ampun pun cuma macam kumpat pernah rumi ning moron dah ampun kumpat kan aing kening tengah narenar. Macam pernah kumpat me baga kumpat kan rumi ni tengah dalam narenar. Macam buat tinggi ni tengah kumpat kan ni tu bukan bimuru. Cakap. Kumpat nana mau wak dalam kan macam kumpat mangani. Macam apa yang rujuk orang limpi je bukan macam kumpat pepani. Nutrawan tangkan ni bukan peparangan ni bukan kumpat pepani tu.
As far as Onka is concerned, the making of his book was just one step in turning the tables on his relationship with Andrew, who translates for us what Onka has just been saying, about why it was so important to have a film crew come to talk directly to Onka about anthropology.
You wanted to see, so now you can see. Here I am the man who was the professor at Mbug, who taught Andrew everything he knows. He was nothing. He came here a boy didn't even have a beard. He knew nothing. I taught him everything. He took all that away, and that's how he wrote his books. So he's a professor in England, but I am the professor here at Bug.
Onka traveled to the University of Papua New Guinea in Port Moresby, where he dictated his autobiography for Andrew to translate. Then he wrote a song to get Andrew started.
Yani wajinde talamelanga anda moro wataya uguba nimtano igumba na nimba webambo igumba na nimba webambo na boga bondo ba kona mondo yani wajinde talamelanga anda moro wataya uguba
It was Onka himself who had felt it was time to tell his own story to the world.
He knew that I had written about the things he told me about, and I had learnt, and that I'd in fact done 2 books about this. But he felt there should be a book which expressed his total view of the society, or a good deal of it at any rate, in just the same way as I had been trying to present a general picture. He told me that quite clearly and made it quite clear that this book was to be his book and that my task in it was to translate what he said and put it down and not leave anything out.
Onka and Andrew both agree. The real teachers about any society are the so-called informants, not anthropologists, but the people who tell anthropologists about their world.
Now,
usually anthropologists take information away and write it up. The information is passed on to everyone else secondhand. This class in Melanesian anthropology at the University of Papua New Guinea is a classic example. Here's a Belgian teaching Melanesians about their own culture.
The question of residence, usually we can say that in most patrilineal societies, a woman moves to her husband's place, so we would talk about very local residence. More to be said then about the case of paying bride price is that nowadays in particular we see that the items of wealth that circulate in the exchanges.
Melanesians are the people of this part of the Pacific Ocean. They are learning about their society from non-Melanesians, and they read about their people in books written by non-Melanesians. Not surprisingly, some of the students find this bizarre.
You know, I took up Melanesian society as one of the courses, and I found that sitting in and listening to somebody from outside was a little bit awkward. And that's why talking to other friends around the place, we sort of say, oh, come on, I don't want to be reading, you know, when they tell us to get books and do assignments. And one time I actually came back to a lecturer and I said, can I write about my own people, you know, from what I know? And the person said, no, you've got to write from something that is published. And that was a crazy idea, you know, reading about my own people from a book and giving quotations from what somebody has said.
We are part of the society, and it should be interesting, and we should be the ones who should be talking and contributing more ideas than that outsider.
Students would be another interesting thing to talk about their own societies instead of, you know, the lecturers themselves dominating the whole thing and then us answering questions and asking questions, pretending that we from an outside world are looking into the Melanesian society.
I think
there's nothing you can do.
You know, yes, there should be somebody from here who should, you know, teach the subject.
I think that universities, say in Papua New Guinea and universities elsewhere, must have dialogue. If an anthropologist is going to come and study in Papua New Guinea, then we should have a Papua New Guinean academic exchange system between that institution and an institution in Papua New Guinea, so that we can also study some elements of social behavior in, say, United States of America.
That's just what's happening here. Wari Iyamo has come to Berkeley, California to study Americans. He's a graduate student in anthropology at the University of California. In 1928, Margaret Mead was one of the first anthropologists to study Papua New Guineans. In 1983, Wari Iyamo and one other graduate student are the first Papua New Guinean anthropologists to study Americans.
Hi, Wari.
Hi, hello.
I was expecting you half an hour ago.
Wari's thesis advisor is Dr. Laura Nader.
Now tell me about your Oakland projections, what you think you want to do there.
Yeah, the research is about 26 tenants who were living in a transient hotel in one part of Oakland, East Oakland. They weren't evicted in a proper manner. They were just routed out of their homes, supposedly by the police.
Like any anthropologist, Wari has informants. In this case, one of the former tenants from the hotel in East Oakland.
Tell me about the problems you went through when you were evicted.
We discovered that the police had surrounded the hotel and that we were locked out. And I had a dearly beloved pet cat in the apartment, and I wanted to get her out anyway, and they wouldn't even let me do that. They had turned loose a pair of half-trained guard dogs, and all the doors had been kicked in.
You said you were the only person in your family. You have cousin brothers or aunts, uncles?
Yeah, I have no, right. I have no sisters or brothers. And all of my living cousins and aunts and uncles are quite far separated from me, not just in space, but in age.
Well, in such a situation, what would the neighbors, think, and would they come out and help straight away?
I can't imagine that happening. If you're talking about a neighborhood where there are single homes and people have, for the most part, been living there several years, and yes, you could probably get neighborhood help. But if you're talking about the kind of a neighborhood I'm talking about, living in a cheap hotel or in a low-priced apartment, no, because people just don't know each other that well.
I see.
Wari's thesis involves interviewing not just the former tenants, but the lawyers representing them as well. Only recently have anthropologists begun to study people like lawyers who have power in society. Traditionally, they studied people who didn't have the authority to stop them.
Yeah, come on in.
One of the lawyers is Michael Lowy, who at one time had been an anthropologist. Wari pursues his attempts to unravel American kinship patterns and finds out that, as in Papua New Guinea, there's more than one answer to any question.
I understand that the degree of kinship, to what degree it's practiced here, I don't know, but there is some, degree of kinship here,
Some degree, Larry. My God.
I mean, to a certain degree, there is kinship. No one can deny that there is no kinship system here.
Okay, Wari, the idea that kinship is perhaps not as strong in our society, I think is an erroneous idea. It's different. I.e., that is, we have a bilateral kinship system. We have certain descent principles. People come to me all the time, want to make wills. Who do you think they leave it to? Strangers? They leave it to their children. They leave it to their grandchildren. They leave it to their kin. People come in this office and argue over who should get what. Heirlooms. I promised a certain ring to a certain grandchild. Kinship is very, very important.
Some of the things I have seen, having been here for almost 3 years, is the society seems to be open, but in the real sense, it's closed. It seems like everything is institutionalized in this society. Instead of producing for themselves, they've given the power to something else to produce for them. So what I'm saying is that back home, we have gardens. Here, you don't have gardens. So that means you have given your power to certain institutions to produce for you. Another thing which is very obvious, everyone seems to look in or wants to look in, and I think it must have to do with the culture itself. And so when you look around your neighborhood, there are some things that are not so visible. So all people are institutionalized somewhere else. The mentally retarded people are put somewhere else.
You know, what you're doing is really pioneering, Wari. Because although anthropologists have gone all the way around the world, studying all kinds of societies, very few anthropologists from other societies have come to study us. And the U.S. is probably the most understudied culture in the world. And we did have people like de Tocqueville who came, we're still quoting de Tocqueville because he made such a Frenchman who came to the United States to study us and observe our customs and see what made Americans tick. After all, we're a very important force in the world, and some we should be understood and so forth. It isn't that insiders couldn't have made the same points that de Tocqueville made, but they don't, because you have to stand slightly outside to be able to see the things that he saw that were great and that were problematic and so forth about our society. You come from New Guinea and you look at something that in a way is incredulous to somebody from your community. There are people in this society that don't have a house to live in, that don't have a home. Yeah. How does that happen? And are there functional equivalents to it? And how does this society deal with the fact that there are homeless people?
But then there's still one point being made, whether by Americans or by Papua New Guineans, is that we still are the ones who know more about our own cultures. So an American will claim that, yes, it's true that an outsider can come and see my society objectively and say more things about it, but still I'm in control or in master of it because I know the nuances of the languages, or the language. I know the culture, and I know the facts.
I think what we're coming to is a realization that there are different ways of knowing and different ways of understanding, and that outsiders and insiders looking at a society, trying to understand the complexity of human culture. I mean, it's nothing so simple as what the physicists study. I mean, we're studying the most complex thing you could study, and we can't simplify it, because if you simplify studying human society, you lose it. So we have this complexity, and we're doing the best we can when you have outsiders and insiders looking at the same culture and working together.
But how much does the outsider need to become like the insider? Wari chose to go to a university and to speak to Western anthropologists in their own terms. Unka's perspective on our world, as well as his own, could be equally important.
Kokumpani me apo kunete ba napa itinga e mente napa le mornente we ya we went to ugje bigit na me it and rundi ke no bugti ke na te konet na te tem abeni mono to ampe ke te konet na te we no mo ya ngo ke gimi no me na te me bundu mbante ba kundu wa kono bide me nga manda ke ka ni mu ngo ko ke ka ni ha mu gumba kanda ta pe ni nyante ko abati ai te je mo re ab na bu me tinta ko manga no me e we numnya je be me de me ko mana bu numnya ko ko litin mo re ani ko na ba ko ko ni nang ro ani mo moro ko ma to ko ba na ka nang ro ko balut na be te ni ba ka nang ro moi na be te ni ba ka nang ro na tore po me ka ni na ma ka nang ro ko na we ko mo re ani mi ta na ba ko te te e mi na ba mo ro ko mi an ru te ba ko be le ni o ko mi tore ko no